As a business, we're a managed service provider looking after small to medium-sized businesses. Anything from 5 to 10 users up to 2 to 300 is typically our sweet spot. We do have some clients a bit larger than that, but ultimately we feel we can deliver the most effective service in that kind of band.
And how long has Microbyte been around? Tell us a bit about the evolution of the company.
Wow, yeah, that's going back a bit. I've been in IT for probably nearly 2 decades now. However, Microbyte really pushed forward its growth in the last 10 to 15 years, where we became really focused on overall IT management rather than just IT support and help desk, which it's so easy to get caught up into, and all you're doing is taking calls, fixing the same problem over and over again. So from that point, we decided that was sort of the mission. And we've grown ever since based upon a systematic approach to IT rather than just answering the phones. And we've gone sort of to a point where we're at 4 offices across the world offering 24/7 help desk. And something we're really proud of is that we're now able to offer 24/7 help desk to other IT companies using our white label IT brand.
So what did those early years answering the phone, firefighting do for your insight into what customers need now?
Yeah, good question. I mean, as Tom will testify to, I'm usually quite patient, but you can only tell me something once or twice before I get bored. And so those early days were really a test of my own resilience as to how many times am I going to sort this problem out. And so very early on, just because of my own nature, I thought I'm not going to do this forever. And I need to make sure that if we fix a problem once, we are looking at the PCA, or the permanent corrective action. So the whole ethos of the business really grew out of that. And I learned more how not to do things than how to do them in the early days.
And speaking of permanent corrective action, you have an ethos, I suppose, that's stamp out support. Tell me about stamping out support. What does that mean?
Absolutely. Well, we're really proud of it. Well, I'm very proud of it anyway. And it was born over the journey of the last few years where we thought, you know what, everything we do is about reducing IT support. Not reducing the need for it, because it'll always be there, but reducing the stress that comes with it, like the reactions that everybody has to have to it, be it both staff and end users. So we thought, well, how can we categorize what we're about? And we had a brainstorm in the Peterborough office. I came in and said, right, we've got to think of a logo, we've got to think of a tagline. And it went from all sorts of terrible, crazy phrases were scribbled on a board. And in the end, that someone shouted out stomp or stamp. And then that went on a little bit further. But the idea behind it is that everybody's unified behind not fixing the same problem twice. And everything we do as a business has that guiding vision that you only want to solve an annoying problem once, and everybody should be focused on growth, on progress, and actually just furthering our business and our clients' businesses. No one wants to talk about IT, but when you explain to them that IT support is just a byproduct of IT management, and equally on that note, bad IT support is usually delivered because of a bad IT management, then people start to get a bit more engaged and a bit more interested, we find.
So having been on the other end of this, I've worked in companies where I've had to pick up the phone and call IT support. How do you help empower users to not be so reliant on support?
It's a good question, Tom. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I think the days of IT being a bit of a sort of dark art, shut in a corner inside a dark area of the office, people having very little IT experience, barely know how to send an email. Pretty much the gap between the knowledge an IT professional would have and a general modern office worker has closed quite a lot. So I think there's a lot more emphasis now on involving everyone in the business in new technologies that might come in place.
Yeah. It's the engagement at all levels, which actually is in our mission statement, believe it or not. It's the engagement at all levels that's going to help you get a successful IT infrastructure and IT project off the ground. So it isn't just about management saying, right, we're rolling out Teams, everyone get on board, and everyone having to figure it out. And then you end up with 50 different team sites and 2 people in each one, which we've seen. It is all about a driver from the top in terms of why we are doing this, but why it's important to keep communicating every step of the way. And exactly as Tom says, the way you get users engaged is not by telling them once or sending an email saying, we're moving here, brilliant, this is a nice new product to get involved with. It's a constant engagement using various different tactics, even to the point of faking excitement about projects to get buy-in.
Always genuine.
But no, you are, Tom. You are absolutely always.
But it's
genuine.
getting people on board and realizing that the responsibility is actually not on the individual. People have a lot to do and they don't want to learn new technologies. They want things to be as easy as possible. Consumer applications, I'd say, have really driven how businesses operate. And you have to hold hands until the job is done.
It sort of comes in two parts. There's the project side of it, which is the implementation of something new and how we handle our process to engage in those users. But then there's also the ongoing engagement with regards to IT as a whole. I think, Tom, again, looking at the net admin practice, which is something we hold very close in terms of it's an integral part of the business. The net admin process is very much geared around non-stop improvement, non-stop push to standards. And the only way you get that is with constant engagement.
When you're a net admin, your objectives are always sort of twofold. You're spending time on site with the customer, checking over elements of their system, making sure that they meet certain standards. And if it isn't something that's absolutely clear or in standard, that the Microbyte support desk, who are going to, if they are going to be interacting with end users for that business day in, day out, they've got all the information and tools they need to be able to deliver that support. But the continual improvement side of things, that's where communication on site with decision makers, not even just decision makers, most of the things that seem insignificant aren't actually what they appear. Just by speaking with people in comparable positions to me at our clients' offices, guys doing the work, guys sitting at desks in the factories, in the warehouses, you know, they're using their phone to do something, and then you find out they're actually writing it down or taking a photo, then they've got a felt tip pen. And we're not taking anything away from what people in that business would do, but we're complementing what perhaps the line manager has been saying as well. We're sort of talking to them, oh, so this is something that's gone on. Yeah. Well, let's take that now with not just the problem, let's think about a solution we can come up with. Probably not going to be able to come up with one on the site, but that's where we come back, we collaborate with our team, we go to our VITDs like Yusuf, like Lewis, and we come up with a solution with the technologies that we know we have available to us. That's how things improve and progress.
So sticking with you, Tom, in your role as a network administrator, tell me about your journey with Microbyte first. When did you join and what have you been doing at Microbyte?
I mean, it's 5 years I've been with Microbyte, and it's probably been 6 to 7 years in IT. So not quite as long as you, really. One thing I always say is, like, I do genuinely believe IT now, especially when you're thinking about IT from delivering managed services, not just delivering IT support. It is not just about collecting IT knowledge about codes, commands, firewalls, things like that. It's actually knowing what that technology is going to deliver, what actual benefit. Why are we doing this for the firewall? Oh, well, we're just doing it to make it secure. Why are we making it secure? To protect the business from outside threats. Why are we protecting them from outside threats? If you can see the amount of damage even a simple thing like a phishing email can do to a business, that is why we're doing it. And that's why, if you have to keep in the forefront with all these checks you're doing, what the actual impact is for that business.
In terms of the net admin process, those questions have been crafted over years, and you can't ask a new prospect some of those questions because they're kind of almost insulting, some of them. You know, do you have a firewall? Yeah, of course we have a firewall. But if you're within the Microbyte sort of ecosystem, you know what that question really means. And that's a result of years of training that you're not allowed to just run out on site after 3 months and do a net admin visit on your own. And that journey, again, it breeds a deep understanding of the why, which I think comes back to really some of our standards. Everything we do and implement is, believe it or not to make money. It is to reduce support, and it's to make sure that people are safe and secure. And so all of those standards have a deep meaning behind them.
What does a managed service provider do?
4 quadrants, I suppose, would be the best way of describing each of the parts of managed services. So the IT support help desk, the network administrators, the centralization team, and then the VITD.
And how do clients know when they're ready for a managed service provider? There are so many startups, more than ever before, it feels like. At what point do people need a managed service provider?
The moment you start talking about IT support today, in our opinion, you're big enough to be thinking about, do I need a managed IT package? Now, the problem is we've been talking about IT support for 20, 30 years in, well, I'd say in derogatory terms. And I'd say a lot of startups have derogatory views towards what IT is. I don't need IT. Everything I've got is in the cloud. until they call up saying they've got ransomware and they don't know what to do next. I think if you've got valuable data and you have not got a solid process in terms of how you're going to recover your business if you lose anything of value, you need to be thinking about managed services. And managed services doesn't have to be expensive, but it has to encompass all those areas that Tom mentioned and have, especially these days, a reignition towards security. Because we're not just protecting for the threats today right now. We're looking at a wealth of products that will protect from future threats. Nobody on the help desk is going to, they're dealing with, 10, 20, 30 tickets a day. A ticket's not going to come in to restore a file from a backup and they're going to go, oh, actually, no, let's talk about this. Let's get you a proposal over. No, it doesn't happen. And that's why it has to be segregated into 4 blocks, which is, again, Tom mentioned net admin, help desk, centralization, and BITD. And those together deliver a genuine service that you can feel safe for. If just IT support, you should not feel safe. And in big events, let's say a breach of a network, how do you know if your cyber insurance is going to pay out from losing that data? You have no clue unless you can prove you've taken a systematic approach to protecting your business.
Help desk, they're going to be the soldiers fighting the war for you.
Yeah.
Have you got anyone higher up actually making plans, preparing for threats that are coming in, being able to provide you with not just we fixed it now, but why it happened and what we've done about it.
So let's home in on that. So say someone hadn't been taking their security seriously and you got a call saying we've just had an attack, we've lost money or lost data or whatever. What would you do in that situation?
Well, the first thing we say is, have you got a managed service agreement with anyone or an IT support company that can help? Invariably, if they've called us, they don't, and the incumbent IT provider is probably just not as qualified to deal with those things. We're always as helpful as we can. Now, we obviously give priority to all our managed service agreement clients first because they've been with us, well, for however long they might have, but they made the commitment to trust in our system. But for those clients that come in who have had a breach or a particular issue, we do everything we can to rectify the situation straight away for them, if we obviously can gain access or control to it. So we look at mitigating the risk. We shut the borders, as it were, to stop any more loss. And then we would work with the client to say, okay, this is where you're at. Here is a report of the actual damage that you can determine whether you want to share that with your clients or with the Information Commission or whoever it might be. But let's look at how we stop this exact thing happening again. We can't guarantee something similar won't happen, but what we can do is guarantee that next time you'll be in a position where if you need insurance, they will pay out because you've stuck to a set of standards. And secondly, next time you'll know even more quickly what area has been breached. And what we see a lot of the time is people know there's a problem, they know there's a breach, but they haven't got a clue where it started, who it affected, what it cost them, until we start digging under the hood.
It feels like that is the landscape at the moment, that there is so much consumer standard technology that people can use. There's all these, Facebook, Google, everyone is offering a business service as well. And people think, well, all I need to know to run a business is, Google for Business or Facebook Workplace or something like that. And they're not thinking anything about their infrastructure or how they're going to scale. What risks do people need to be aware of and what, alarm bells should be ringing for people that make them take the next step?
I mean, that is that's sort of central to our argument, really, isn't it, Tom? And it's stop using home equipment that hasn't been validated by your IT company. If you are making the decision to buy a bit of technology that is going to be integrated with your business and try to deliver services with that to your clients, you better be damn sure it's up to scratch, it's safe, and it adheres to some level of standard. Because again, a classic one, exactly as you say, someone goes to, I don't know, Best Buy or Currys or wherever it might be, buys a laptop. They go, oh, I've bought a laptop and I saved £200 on it. Okay, why? Why did you save £200? Well, because it's got Windows Home. Okay, great. So that can't log onto the domain. So you've lost all your auditing. MFA is not, it's never ending. And then they will pay to get those problems fixed, so it does fall in line in standard. I would say these days it's easier to explain that than 10 years ago because, ironically, credit to the hackers for raising awareness, people don't want to push it as much, whereas back in the day they would chance it with a £50, I don't know, USB stick instead of a £100 one or whatever else. Now it's like, actually, I better make sure with IT. So we're actually finding the tide is changing.
So what products and services can help limit human error?
If we are literally listing services that we trust and supply, we've recently had a webcast about LastPass. So LastPass allows at a corporate level you to store all the different sorts of accounts for passwords for portals, web services that you might use as a business. You can also link this with your Microsoft identity. So if you've already got multi-factor authentication on that account, protection, and all the other things that come into that, it would roll over to the LastPass account. Now, the reason products like this are useful, rather than just saying get LastPass, the actual reason that is going to be useful for people to use is essentially because the more different options and ways people have of accessing things, if you've got 5 or 6 different portals with different passwords that John has to remember, is that the most easy way for them to do their work? Probably not. Are shortcuts going to start coming into place? Yes, before you know it, there's going to be a sticky note.
Yeah.
Passwords stuck there. Or the passwords might all start to be set to the same thing. One of the reasons we are a Microsoft shop and we have a lot of investment in the Microsoft suite is because a lot of the tools complement each other. So if you're already using your word processor, your Excel for spreadsheets, Teams for communications, all of these tools integrate with the same identity, SharePoint for file storage. It's a complete sort of stack of tools that mean essentially you've got one identity. We can put all the security measures we think are important in place on that, protect that account as much as possible. And that for an end user is a very useful thing to have. They've got a simple way of working that's secure.
Yeah.
Yes. I think you're right, Tom. It's about making the end user's experience as simple as possible and building a fence around what they do. So yes, you can play in the playpen, but there's only so much you can do, near the fence line. And all of the products we try to implement are all with have the idea of introducing a layer of protection over what is already there. Most companies use a bit of software or a few bits of software, and that's all they do. That isn't where the problems occur. The problems occur when people are trying to do the new things or the things that are undocumented, or I just want to use Dropbox or whatever else it is. They're the things that you need alerting around. You need almost some AI type tools that say, this isn't normal behavior in that business. Why is that happening? Tom doesn't normally copy a gigabyte of data to his USB drive. What's he doing? Alert. So it's a layer of protection that helps us manage those technologies better. And I mean, you're going to see over the next decade a huge number of products doing just that. Because if you look at the number of cloud platforms and cloud suites now, yeah, it's great. And they all do everything. But try and get all that information together to manage who's doing what on each one. I mean, it's untenable.
So many services that use things over the internet now. So as an example, security companies obviously obligation to you is to put a CCTV system in, make it so you can log onto it and make it so they can manage it remotely. Are they thinking about locking down the firewall, making sure it's secure as possible, or are they just going to poke a big hole in it for their management port and leave it? This is where the managed side comes in.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be, if you're in a position where you're sort of getting an email from someone saying, I need to do a load of stuff with your firewall ports, that probably doesn't mean a lot, and you forward it to a help desk, you then reply and go, yep, done. That's not being managed. Yeah. That's almost, they're absolving themselves responsibility. And you can imagine the response that would come if their problem developed because of that. Well, you told me to do it.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't feel like you're qualified to make those decisions because of that level of IT being a little bit mysterious or the details of it, the nuances of it not being part of your skill set, that's when you need a managed IT provider to help you make those decisions.
And how do you help clients, check in with you basically to stay across it so you know that anything that they're doing that they don't think is IT related?
I mean, that is a constant effort of marketing, of engagement, but also celebrating our relationships with the client. But having a few different people allocated to each company that have almost different personalities. And we do work towards that, because you know what, with the best will in the world, if you've got two people who are a little bit more on the introverted spectrum engaging with a client, you're probably not going to get the type of generalist discussions that you need to find out where a business is going. So we like to have a blend of those characters working on an account, because you know what, MDs, CEOs, execs, half the time they won't remember what is going on that's so exciting that it's going to engage in IT. And so it needs that type of relationship to execute those thoughts. How we tackle that, again, it goes right back to the four blocks. Time is the most important thing any of us have, be it in business, at home, for hobbies, whatever else. But yet there seems this disconnect when somebody thinks, oh, well, this will cost me another £3 per user per month, and they'll never be whinging about signature issues again. There's a disconnect between where real value is, and time is the only precious commodity these days. And I think everybody in business needs to sort of keep that at the forefront of their mind.
Yeah. And time does still have a price tag when it comes to your business. You're paying for an employee's time, and you don't want either disruption to their work. You don't want any excuses for their work. You need to be giving your staff a good environment in which to work.
Remove obstructions. I mean, that's one of our sort of core values. Remove obstructions to work. And it's everybody's job in the team to help remove everybody else's obstructions. We do have our own little formula in-house, which is effectively, have you had to do the same thing 3 times a week and it's taken at least 10 to 15 minutes? If it has, we look to automate that process. But we also look to do it for all of our clients. 50% of it is a systematic process change, and 50% is you need to make an investment in something that's going to get rid of this headache for you.
When I'm doing my admin visits, that's usually what the return to site involves. I'm going to go through all the things I've found. There'll be probably a bigger list of corrections that can be made immediately, improvements, where standards have changed, where the threatscape has changed slightly. Microsoft are always releasing loads of new features that we can take advantage of. We want to make sure we're always improving those and keeping those up to date. And then another list of things where the infrastructure you currently have, the investments you've currently made, are not currently up to par. And we need to talk about a VITD level or an IT director to direct a discussion about how the business will be impacted if this decision isn't made. One of the common things that will come up, let's say you've got your server cabinet, you've got your server, it's chugging away, it's reached the end of its usable life. Do I go to the cloud? Do I invest in a server on premise? Do I go serverless? You know, these are the sorts of things where we're seeing cloud mentioned absolutely everywhere now. And it's the VITD then would have that discussion basically to make clear each of those options. We'll never insist, but we'll always make a recommendation on how we think which solution will be the best fit for that business.
So we talked about the cost to businesses of wasted time, their employees spending time with disrupted services or IT issues. What's the cost of IT support?
Yeah, I mean, obviously in the IT industry, there's still a lot of mystery around cost, and a lot of companies want to shroud and not be 100% transparent. We're open book, and we want everybody to know, because it's not very hard to work out what a good service should cost. In short, I mean, just sort of taking it sort of to brass tacks, as a business, if you want good, all-encompassing support, you want help with your IT strategy, you want monitoring and alerting that you're not having to wake up at 2 a.m. to worry about, and you want to know you've got some protection in place, like cloud backups, like OpenDNS. Umbrella is now OpenDNS, but Sentinel-1 for antivirus, all of these good base level tools, as we call it. If you want those, you need to be investing £50 to £60 per month per user to make sure you get a good service. And in the UK, I would say that's kind of the base level. It can go way up over £100 a seat. And I mean, going across into the States, as you know, we've opened our office recently there, you can be looking at £100, £150 a seat per person per month. And of course, that sounds like a lot of money, but dissolve that into what you pay somebody. I mean, it's not a lot to make sure that they're operational. They've always got somebody to call. They're not waking the boss up at 10 p.m. because they can't log into their email. It is a cost that even if you doubled it, even if you trebled it, it is not hard to see where that value is.
I mean, depending on the staff, it could be 1 or 2 hours of their time. And if they're, saving that
Absolutely.
time plus extra hours. It pays for
100%.
itself.
Think of some IT companies that may still have break fix models where it's £50 a ticket every month, say 30 tickets minimum, something like that. I'm not a money focused person, but if I was running a business that was break fix and I'm getting £50 every time the boss's mobile phone needed an email account add-in, I'm probably not going to be too interested in fixing things permanently.
Yeah.
That printer's a right workhorse. It keeps breaking 4 times a week, so that's 200 quid a go.
Am I fixing that one cable? No.
That proves, though, I think that what Microbyte do is that's our dedication, because we're saying essentially unlimited support, whilst also saying we're going to stamp out that support.
Yeah.
It's a win-win.
Your client base has grown over the years, but you've still got clients that you've had from day one. How have you kept that level of trust?
I mean, we're so proud of our client base, not least because for at least half of our journey, we were on completely 30-day rolling contracts. And that was to breed trust that we want to work with you because we want to work with you, not because we're going to tie you into any long-term agreement. Yes, it's true. We have some businesses that have been with us over sort of 13, 14 years, if not longer, that are still there doing the same thing, and we're still delivering the same service. Now, that has to be testament to, I think, our boys and girls who are all constantly pushing forward services, keeping it interesting to clients, and keeping as engaged as they were in the first week of starting. I mean, what we're really keen to do as well is make sure that no one company gets attached to any one member of staff. They might have their favourites, but it's our job to prove that switching between members of staff, you are going to get more or less what you signed up for. And that consistency can only be delivered with a good net admin process, a good VITD process, good monitoring, and ultimately a brilliant help desk who are always going to solve problems 24 hours a day.